Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the previous three videos, we discussed the concept of ṣadr, qalb, and fu'ād, which refer to the inner existential and perceptive layers of the human being. Now we turn to the final and innermost layer of the human being, the Lubb. Why can the Lubb be considered a level higher than the fu'ād? Does the Quran describe the possessor of Lubb? Why is their place at the end of the house of peace, Darus Salam? Why does the Quran describe them as the people of remembrance, piety, wisdom, and understanding of the signs? I'm Hassan Muradi, and in this video from Echoes from the Quran, I want to answer these questions. My short answer is this: fu'ād is the level of seeing the divine reality, while Lubb is the level of not seeing oneself. The possessor of Lubb is a person who acts solely according to a criterion of truth. Such a person reaches the end of the house of peace, that is, the state of annihilation of the self. Such a person can distinguish good from evil and avoid evil. Such a person is constantly mindful of the ultimate reality, God. Such a person sees this reality in all signs and manifestations and becomes a wise human being whose good is abundant. In what follows, we will examine each of these points in detail. At the level of ṣadr, a person experiences openness in perception and feeling. At the level of qalb, a person can contemplate the ever-changing manifestations of God, that is, His acts. At the level of fu'ād, a person witnesses the stable names and the essence of God. Finally, at the level of Lubb, the person becomes annihilated from the self and attends only to God. Such a person sees unity in every multiplicity and sees the one behind every sign and form. For this reason, they are always mindful of God and are people of remembrance. Lubb, which means the core or innermost part of something, appears in the Quran always in the form al-albāb, the possessors of Lubb. Who are these people? According to the Quran, al-Zumar 17:18, their first and most important characteristic is servanthood. Give good news to my servants, فَبَشِّرْ عِبَادِي. Their second characteristic is that they listen to every word. الَّذِينَ يَسْتَمِعُونَ الْقَوْلَ. Their third characteristic is that they evaluate what they hear according to the criterion of truth placed within them, their primordial structure or fitrah, and they discern the best of it. Their fourth characteristic is that they follow the best of what they hear. فَيَتَّبِعُونَ أَحْسَنَهُ. These are the ones who possess Lubb. أُولَٰئِكَ هُمْ أُولُو الْأَلْبَابِ. In this verse, servanthood and receptivity to truth are the essential conditions for understanding. If a person lacks this quality, the process of understanding does not begin. If this quality exists, the ear opens to hearing. This state occurs only in the servant of truth, not in the servant of the self or the servant of another. One who serves the self cannot listen to others. One who serves another listens only to that other. The second stage is evaluating what is heard. This evaluation requires a criterion. What is this criterion? It is pure monotheism, tawḥīd, at the level of the divine essence, which is higher than tawḥīd at the level of the divine names or the divine acts. After tawḥīd, the structure of the divine names taught to the human being forms the primordial shape of the spirit breathed into them. Servanthood is impossible without knowledge of tawḥīd. A person must first be certain that the reality of the world is one. one whose signs fill the entire cosmos. This certainty is impossible without divine guidance, which is the one reality of the world. A person on the path of guidance moves from the level of ṣadr and its openness to Islam to the level of qalb and its softness for receiving the constant manifestations of God. A person on this path moves from seeing the manifestations to seeing the reality itself at the level of fu'ad. Beyond this stage is not seeing oneself as the knowing subject and God as the known object. The possessor of Lubb is the one who reaches this level. The possessor of fu'ad sees both self and God. The possessor of Lubb sees only God. The best word, qawl ahsan, is the word based on the pure essential monotheism. To choose such a word, one must have reached the level of Lubb. Reaching this level and the levels below it is possible only through divine guidance, because only the one who owns the manifestations and signs of the world can raise the human being who is himself one of these manifestations from seeing the manifestation to seeing the reality. Reaching this level and the levels below it possible only through divine guidance, because only the one who owns the manifestations and signs of the world can raise the human being who is himself one of these manifestations from seeing the manifestation to seeing the reality. Reaching this level and the levels below it is possible only through divine guidance, because only the one who owns the manifestations and signs of the world can raise the human being who is himself one of these manifestations from seeing the manifestations to seeing the reality. Another point: if a person is below the level of Lubb, they cannot discern the best word, but they can discern a good word. Such a person possesses fu'ad, not Lubb. The good word corresponds to tawḥīd at the level of divine names and acts. Understanding tawḥīd at the level of the names requires fu'ad, because fu'ad is stable and names are stable. Understanding tawḥīd at the level of acts requires qalb, because the qalb is ever changing and the acts are ever changing. Understanding tawḥīd at the level of the names requires fu'ad, because fu'ad is stable and the names are stable. Understanding tawḥīd at the level of acts requires qalb, because the qalb is ever changing and the acts are ever changing. To understand these levels of tawḥīd, consider this: if a person sees themselves as a being with attributes such as knowledge and power, but says that without God's will they can do nothing. To understand these levels of tawḥīd, consider this: if a person sees themselves as a being with attributes such as knowledge and power, but says that without God's will they can do nothing, this person is at the level of tawḥīd of acts, at tawḥīd al-af'āli. If they see themselves as a being with no attributes of their own and therefore no acts of their own, they are at the level of tawḥīd of names, at tawḥīd al-asma'i. If they do not even see themselves as a being, they are at the level of tawḥīd of essence, at tawḥīd al-zāti. This verse can be considered the foundation of individual and social education from the Quranic perspective. In the Quran, the highest people inwardly are the most open-minded outwardly. To implement this verse, the intellectual environment of home and society must be completely open. Individuals and societies must be accustomed to hearing different views, evaluating them with their own minds, and accepting the burden of thinking and choosing based on their own criteria. Instead of imposing ideas on others, we must cultivate in them the criterion of understanding so that they themselves evaluate and choose the best. In most verses about Lubb, God attributes the quality of remembrance, tazakkur, to the possessor of Lubb. Since ṣadr, qalb, and fu'ād refer to inner layers of the human being and are centers of perception and feeling, we must understand that Lubb is the final and highest inner layer for perception and feeling. If ascending means moving toward tawḥīd, then Lubb is the highest understanding of tawḥīd. For this reason, the Quran repeatedly says that only the possessors of Lubb are people of remembrance. What is remembrance and how does it relate to tawḥīd? Remembrance is not repetition of a word or phrase. In the Quranic view of tawḥīd, remembrance means forgetting the self and remembering that the entire cosmos is his sign. Forgetting the self has levels. It begins with not seeing one's own acts, continues with not seeing one's own attributes, and ends with not seeing one's own essence. Therefore, the possessor of Lubb, who have reached the highest degree of tawḥīd, have reached the highest degree of remembrance. Only they do not forget that all the verses revealed to the Prophet are truths. They are not like the blind who do not see God's presence in the cosmos and especially in the Quran. He is one who knows that what has been revealed to you from your Lord is the truth, like one who is blind. أَفَمَنْ يَعْلَمُ أَنَّمَا أُنزِلَ إِلَيْكَ مِنْ رَبِّكَ الْحَقُّ كَمَنْ هُوَ أَعْمَى. Only the possessor of Lubb take heed. إِنَّمَا يَتَذَكَّرُ أُولُو الْأَلْبَابِ Ar-Ra'd 19. For the possessor of Lubb, the multiplicity of Quranic verses returns to a single unity, just as the multiplicity of cosmic signs returns to a single unity. They remain faithful to God's covenant, which is tawḥīd, and do not break the divine pact because they have no self that could stand against God and break the covenant. Those who fulfill God's covenant, الَّذِينَ يُوفُونَ بِعَهْدِ اللَّهِ, and do not break the pact, وَلَا يَنْقُضُونَ الْمِيثَاقَ Ar-Ra'd 20. Because they have reached the level of annihilation, they connect every manifestation in the world to the one who manifests it. The thought of the greatness of the one Lord who owns all manifestations fills them with awe, and they fear the evil of the reckoning. Those who join what God has commanded to be joined, وَالَّذِينَ يَصِلُونَ مَا أَمَرَ اللَّهُ بِهِ أَنْ يُوصَلَ, fear the Lord and dread an evil reckoning. وَيَخْشَوْنَ رَبَّهُمْ وَيَخَافُونَ سُوءَ الْحِسَابِ Ar-Ra'd 21. The possessor of Lubb are those who are patient for the sake of God's face, not for paradise or out of fear of hell. وَالَّذِينَ صَبَرُوا ابْتِغَاءَ وَجْهِ رَبِّهِمْ. They establish prayer وَأَقَامُوا الصَّلَاةَ, because prayer is nothing but the remembrance of tawḥīd in all its levels. They give secretly and openly from what God has provided them. وَأَنْفَقُوا مِمَّا رَزَقْنَاهُمْ سِرًّا وَعَلَانِيَةً, because they see no self and no ownership for themselves. They repel evil with good. وَيَدْرَعُونَ بِالْحَسَنَةِ السَّيِّئَةِ, because they see God as the doer of all things. For them, evil is the manifestation of majesty, Jalal, or al-Asma'ul Jalali, and good is the manifestation of beauty, Jamal, or al-Asma'ul Jamali. The end of that host belongs only to them. أُولَٰئِكَ لَهُمْ عُقْبَى الدَّارِ Ar-Ra'd 22. Those they shall have the ultimate end of the abode. What is this house and what is its end? The house of the possessor of Lubb is a garden characterized by the permanence and stability, adan. The end of this garden refers to the highest station in tawḥīd. If the station of fu'ad is the abode of peace, Dar salam, then the station of Lubb is the gardens of Eden, Jannat Adnan, and the possessor of Lubb reaches the end of this garden. Their fathers, spouses, and descendants who have done righteous deeds also enter this garden. These three, fathers, spouses, and descendants, can be understood symbolically as the causes and effects of a person's action. One's action is one's spouse. Its causes are its parents, and its effects are its children. These three accompany the person into the garden of permanence, but they do not reach its end. The angels enter upon them from every gate. وَالْمَلَائِكَةُ يَدْخُلُونَ عَلَيْهِمْ مِنْ كُلِّ بَابٍ. If angels are understood as symbols of obedience to truth, then their entering from every gate means that the obedience they practice in all matters now appears to them in visible form. The angels greet the possessor of Lubb with peace. The house is abode of peace, Dar salam, because one who has reached annihilation has no existence left to engage in conflict. This station is attained through their patience. Peace be upon you for what you patiently endured. Salamun alaykum bima sabartum. Ar-Ra'd 24. Patience in obeying the reality of the world, along with prayer and seeking help from God, wasta'inu bis-sabr was-salat, is one of the most important tasks for a human being, and the journey back to the garden of refuge, Jannatul Ma'wa, and the house of peace, Dar salam. Only those who perceive the greatness of reality and their own nature as a sign can possess these two qualities. For others, these qualities are extremely difficult. وَإِنَّهَا لَكَبِيرَةٌ إِلَّا عَلَى الْخَاشِعِينَ al-Baqarah 45. Human beings have many levels, from sense perception to beyond intellect. Each level demands that the person remain at the level and ignore the others. Each level demands that the person remain at the level and ignore the others. A person must be patient against these demands and not become weak before them. Prayer means seeking help from God, the origin and destination of the journey. The end of this house is very good. How excellent is the ultimate end of the abode. فَنِعْمَ عُقْبَى الدَّارِ Ar-Ra'd 24. The end of the house of peace is annihilation of the self. When one reaches this station, all suffering ends. The possessor of Lubb are those who have been given wisdom, and whoever is given wisdom has been given abundant good. He gives wisdom to whom he wills. يُؤْتِي الْحِكْمَةَ مَنْ يَشَاءُ. And whoever is given wisdom has been given abundant good. وَمَنْ يُؤْتِ الْحِكْمَةَ فَقَدْ أُوتِيَ خَيْرًا كَثِيرًا. And none remembers except the possessor of Lubb. وَمَا يَذَّكَّرُ إِلَّا أُولُو الْأَلْبَابِ al-Baqarah 269. This wisdom is the knowledge of tawḥīd. Therefore, only the possessor of Lubb can remain among the multiplicity of creation without forgetting the unity. Therefore, only the possessor of Lubb can remain among the multiplicity of creation without forgetting the unity. In 10 verses of the Quran, God says, "We gave you the book and wisdom." This distinction can be understood like the difference between the instances of knowledge and the faculty of knowledge. A mathematician solves many problems, but the faculty of mathematics is What enables all those solutions? Thus, if someone is given wisdom, they are given abundant good. Regarding the fact that some Quranic verses are ambiguous, mutashabih, and some are clear, muhkam, only the possessor of Lubb do not forget that both types are manifestations of divine names. They know that ambiguous verses are not the result of an independent force like Satan interfering with revelation. Their prayer is, "O Lord, do not cause our hearts to deviate after you have guided us." They also ask for mercy from the higher realms, that is, mercy that is with God. Āl Imrān 8. The possessor of Lubb are people of unity, not division. They see everything in the world and in the divine book with a unifying gaze. Those who lack Lubb always see the parts of the world as separate and must invent many theories to explain their imagined relationship. For example, theories about the relationship between soul and body, when perhaps there is no real separation and the two are simply levels or aspects of one reality. Those who reach the level of Lubb can pass beyond the form of the world and reach its core. They understand that the heavens and the earth are manifestations of names such as al-Wasi and al-Wazi, and that the alternation of night and day is the manifestation of the names al-Basit and al-Qabid. Āl Imrān 119. When the Quran reaches them, they become people of the remembrance. Ibrahim 52. Through the descent of the Quran and reflection upon it, they become people of remembrance. Sad 29. When the Quran says that the stories of the prophets are lessons for the possessor of Lubb, it means that they can pass beyond the outward form of these stories and reach their inner core. Yusuf 111. For example, they can see the story of Joseph as a roadmap of the spiritual traveler. Only the possessor of Lubb learned from the story of Job and his patience. Sad 43. An important point is that the possessor of Lubb must have piety, taqwā. Wiqāyah, the root of taqwā, means a shield. The possessor of Lubb must protect their inner reality. This protection is the best provision. وَتَزَوَّدُوا فَإِنَّ خَيْرَ الزَّادِ التَّقْوَى. Take provisions, for the best provision is piety. وَاتَّقُونَ يَا أُولَى الْأَلْبَابِ. Al-Baqarah 197. And be mindful of me, O possessor of Lubb. What is the relationship between piety and remembrance? Tazakkur. Piety is the preservation of perception at the level of Lubb, that is, preserving the state of annihilation. Preserving this state requires constant remembrance. This essence of all acts of worship and all spiritual practices is the remembering one's transcendent reality and protecting it. The essence of all acts of worship and all spiritual practices is the remembering one's transcendent reality and protecting it. If this reality is pure and good, tayyib, then everything else becomes impure and corrupt. The multiplicity of the worldly form and the human ego is overwhelming, but the one who has reached Lubb knows that no matter how abundant the impure may be, it is no weight compared to the pure. Thus the Quran says that the impure and the pure are not equal. قُلْ لَا يَسْتَوِي الْخَبِيثُ وَالطَّيِّبُ. Even if the abundance of the impure amazes you, وَلَوْ أَعْجَبَكَ كَثْرَةُ الْخَبِيثِ. Be mindful of God, O possessor of Lubb, so that you may be prosper. فَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ يَا أُولِي الْأَلْبَابِ لَعَلَّكُمْ تُفْلِحُونَ Al-Ma'idah 100. Therefore, the possessor of Lubb must always choose what is pure, pure speech, pure knowledge, pure food, over what is impure. A single pure thing, even if small, is incomparable to the countless impure things. Pure knowledge or food brings light and closeness to God, while thousands of impure forms bring only darkness and distance. They must always act with justice. For this reason, God says to the possessor of Lubb that in the law of retribution, qisas, which is a manifestation of the name al-Ad, there is life for you, so that you may have piety. Al-Baqarah 179. وَلَكُمْ فِي الْقِصَاصِ حَيَاةٌ يَا أُولِي الْأَلْبَابِ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. Qisas in its linguistic root means to follow the trace or footprint of something and to return something in equal measure. Qisas has an outer meaning to inflict a harm on the offender equal to the harm they caused. But qisas can also have an inner spiritual meaning. The soul must be counterbalance its attachment to the world with an equal degree of attention to the hereafter. In other words, the qisas of worldly attention is attention to the next world. Qisas of self-centeredness is turning one's attention toward God and reality of existence. The qisas of self-centeredness is turning one's attention toward God and the reality of existence. In its outward sense, qisas reduces crime and death and increases life within society. In its inward sense, qisas reduces the soul's heedlessness, its tendency to act for imaginary, worldly goals, and increase persons' awareness and orientation toward the life of the hereafter. In the outward sense, qisas reduces crime and death and increases life within society. In its inward sense, qisas reduces the soul's heedlessness, its tendency to act for imaginary, worldly goals, and increases presence, awareness, and orientation toward the life of the hereafter. That true life which, if we truly understood it, is the real and superior form of existence. This worldly life is nothing but play and distraction. وَمَا الْحَيَاةُ الدُّنْيَا إِلَّا لَهْوٌ وَلَعِبٌ. And indeed, the abode of the hereafter, that is the true life. وَإِنَّ الدَّارَ الْآخِرَةَ لَهِيَ الْحَيَوَانِ. If only they know. لَوْ كَانُوا يَعْلَمُونَ. Al-Ankabut 64. The people of Lubb, the innermost core, understood qisas in its inner sense. Therefore, they execute qisas upon their worldly soul. Therefore, they execute qisas upon their worldly soul. They restrain it from gazing at the world and from engaging in its imaginary game. They place a shield, wiqayah, between themselves and the lower soul to prevent it from turning toward the world. The people of Lubb, through their state of remembrance, tazakkur, and piety, taqwā, are granted the ability to see the world as an ayah, a sign. إن في خلق السماوات والأرض واختلاف الليل والنهار لآيات لأولي الألباب. Āl Imrān 119. Indeed, in the creation of the heavens and the earth and the alternation of the night and day are signs for those endowed with Lubb. Āl Imrān 119. They seize everything in existence as a sign and manifestation of the divine names. They perceive apparent dualities as two faces of one reality. The heavens and the earth symbolize subtlety versus density, meaning versus matter, inwardness versus outwardness. Night and day symbolize ignorance, heedlessness, and death versus knowledge, presence, and life. Thus, when they witness these dualities, they remember the single reality behind them. Those who remember God standing, sitting, and laying on their side. الَّذِينَ يَذْكُرُونَ اللَّهَ قِيَامًا وَقُعُودًا وَعَلَى جُنُوبِهِمْ. By contemplating these paired creations, they realize that the root of these dualities lies in the interplay of the divine names. For example, the name of the outward al-Zahir and the name of the inward al-Batin, or the name of presence huzur and the name of wailing ghaflat. Therefore, they understand that these dualities are not false constructs of human imagination, but manifestations of a true metaphysical polarity, and they reflect upon the creation of the heavens and the earth. وَيَتَفَكَّرُونَ فِي خَلْقِ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. Or Lord, you have not created this in vain. رَبَّنَا مَا خَلَقْتَ هَذَا بَاطِلًا. For this reason, they ask God to preserve this state of tawḥīd within them and to protect them from falling into shirk. So protect us from the punishment of the fire. فَقِنَا عَذَابَ النَّارِ. Āl Imrān 191. They know that whoever enters the fire on the day of resurrection is exposed in the ultimate disgrace of having lived in shirk. O Lord, whoever who admit into the fire, you have surely disgraced him. رَبَّنَا إِنَّكَ مَنْ تُدْخِلِ النَّارِ فَقَدْ أَخْزَيْتَهُ. Just as tawḥīd is light, shirk is darkness, and in the hereafter, that darkness appears as fire. For such a person, there is no helper, because the fire is nothing but the manifestation of their own non-tawḥīd consciousness. Such a person has wronged the inner light that God placed within them. وَمَا لِلظَّالِمِينَ مِنْ أَنصَارٍ. Āl Imrān 192. At the end of this video, we join the people of Lubb in their prayer. O Lord, we have heard a caller calling to faith, saying, believe in our Lord, and so we believe. رَبَّنَا إِنَّنَا سَمِعْنَا مُنَادِيًا يُنَادِي لِلْإِيمَانِ أَنْ آمِنُوا بِرَبِّكُمْ فَآمَنَّا. O Lord, forgive us our sins, erase our misdeeds, and cause us to die among the righteous. رَبَّنَا فَاغْفِرْ لَنَا ذُنُوبَنَا وَكَفِّرْ عَنَّا سَيِّئَاتَنَا وَتَوَفَّنَا مَعَ الْأَبْرَارِ. O Lord, grant us what you promised us through your messengers. رَبَّنَا وَآتِنَا مَا وَعَدتَّنَا عَلَى رُسُلِكَ. And do not disgrace us on the day of resurrection. وَلَا تُخْزِنَا يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ. Truly, you never fail in your promise. إِنَّكَ لَا تُخْلِفُ الْمِيعَادَ. Thank you for being here.